Hi, and thanks for logging on to the Daily DVAR Halacha. And here's a brand new halacha for you, and it's for Monday, the 28th day of March. Here we go. Today, we better explain the difference between Gebrochts and not Gebrochts. Some of you know this inside out, some of you don't. Let's get the basics. Whenever matzah is baked, what happens is water and flour are put together, and they're kneaded together, and then they're very quickly put into the oven, and they're cooked at pretty high temperature. It's a very fast cooking, and then you have a piece of matzah. Now, it's important that the water and flour don't stay in contact with each other for so long, and they go straight into the oven for baking, or at least we don't get into the specifics, but we don't allow them to rise and become leaven. And as soon as they get into contact, as fast as we can with the kneading and the everything, we get them right into the oven so that they could bake rather quickly, so that there's no time for the water and flour to hang out together and become leaven or chametz. Okay, that's how matzah is made. Now, there's always the distant possibility that after a piece of matzah is put into the oven, there could be a spot in the matzah. It's a very small fear that this could happen, but it could happen, that a small piece of the matzah had a bit of flour that didn't become baked, didn't become mixed well with the water, and didn't become baked. So there's like a little spot somewhere on that matzah, perhaps, that just has some flour. Now, if that flour is just sitting there, that's kind of sort of fine, except that if that flour comes into contact with any water, and it's not going to get rebaked because you're not rebaking it, that's a piece of matzah. So when that little bit of flour that's inside of that matzah comes into contact with water, then it could be turned into chametz if it's not going to be rebaked, and it's not going to be rebaked. Therefore, there are certain people who say, hey, I got a great idea. Let me just make certain that my matzahs never come into contact with water at all. Those are the people who they make certain to eat only non-gebrochts. That means they have their matzah never come into contact with water. Now, that might not seem like a big deal to you, but think about it. That means they can't crumple up their matzah and put it in soup. They can't allow their matzah to be put down on the table and to get wet from drips that are on the table. They can't make those scrambled matzah brie omelets that are, matzah and some water put on them and egg and everything, kind of like the French toast of matzah, if I'm allowed to say that. They're not allowed to make those. And there's a whole matzah balls, they're not allowed to make those. So there are people who have that custom, and they are called non-gebrochts. They don't allow any of their matzah to come into contact with water. And they eat a lot of potato starch over Pesach because whenever they want to make anything, they're doing all their baking without matzah meal because the matzah meal can't come into contact with water and stuff. And so all their baking is done with potato starches or things like that instead of matzah meal and things like that. Then there are the Gebrochts people. They are the people who say it's a small, distant fear and you don't really have to worry about it. And so they have matzah balls and matzah omelets and they put their matzah down on the table, and if water spills on it, it's nothing. They break up matzah and put it in their soup. They can put matzah meal in their soup, etc. Now, the big question, of course, is if you eat gebrochts, are you like on a lower standard of kashrus or something? Are you to be frowned upon? And the answer is no, no. There's just a custom that people have to try to eat non-gebrochts, and it goes by your family custom. If your family eats non-gebrochts, then that's the custom that you would follow as your family. If your family eats gebrochts, then you're just totally allowed to, and you don't have to feel guilty. You don't have to feel like you're cutting corners, that you're not kosher on a high standard or whatever. It's just totally fine. What we do is we consider it a custom for those who keep non-gebrochts, and anyone who has that family custom keeps it. Anyone who doesn't have that family custom doesn't keep it. If you say, oh yeah, but I'm a person with like the people above me in my lineage were not so orthodox, so I don't even know what my custom is. So then you can speak to your rabbi about which way you should adopt. But I want you to understand, mainly in today's halacha, that the non-Gebrochts people won't be saying to the Gebrochts people, your food's all treif. No one's going to say that. At least they shouldn't, because nobody calls it treif. It's just that there's a stringent custom that some people have to not eat Gebrochts, and that's how it remains. Just to show you an example of how it's just a custom but not a law, many people who don't eat gebrochts throughout Pesach will eat it on the last day of Pesach just to show that it was a custom and wasn't a law. So trust me, if they're going to eat it on the last day of Pesach, that means they don't consider it to be treif. They wouldn't allow treif food in their mouth. We're sticking to a custom for the first 7 days, and on the 8th day they leave the custom just to show that it was only a custom. So I hope I've made that clearer now. And if you're not sure where you fall in this custom or not custom, speak to your rabbi about what you should adopt if you don't have a family custom on the matter. Thanks for logging on. Log on again tomorrow for more. Bye-bye.